Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. We're so excited to have you here and excited that you're deciding to spend part of your Saturday with us. That's a big commitment. We appreciate that. William, if we could please start sharing the slides. Excellent, thank you. Well, again, welcome everyone to HASE's annual member meeting. Next slide, please. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time reintroducing our leadership team, as well as going over the structure of Harvard Alumni for Climate and the Environment for those of you who might be new to our organization. We're very excited today to have some amazing speakers. So we will hear from our valued partners at the Salata Institute. We will have an opportunity for you all to connect in some coffee chats and to kind of get to know each other. We will then be joined by Sanjay Seth, who is a local leader advancing climate at the state level, and also one of our founding members of HASE and former co-president. So very excited to have him back. After that, we will introduce our draft priorities for 2026 and hopefully get some feedback from you all on how to kind of take these to the next steps. In breakout groups, and then we will close for the day and you can go about your weekend. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and let's get started. Next slide, please. So for those of you who don't know us, we are a volunteer-led community of Harvard alumni who are passionate about advancing solutions to address the climate crisis and to protect our environment. And so given the enormous and expansive and impressive reach of Harvard alumni, not just in the United States, but across the globe, and with the understanding that climate change will impact every single community, every single sector, every single career, our goal is to bring together the alumni who are working on these climate issues to really mobilize our community for change. And whether that's, people who've been working on climate policy and climate solutions for decades, or those who are just interested in learning, how climate change is going to impact them or what they can do, we have opportunities and we have programs for you. So excited to share more about those. Next slide, please. So we have our strategy in 3 different pillars. First, we work to connect those alumni who are working on these solutions to further build community, to educate, and to support action. We like to amplify the amazing work that is already occurring, that is being led by our alumni, that is being led by Harvard groups and Harvard institutions, and to further develop leaders, to further empower those who want to do more within the community to be able to take that action. And so, again, excited to have this really wonderful, expansive alumni across the globe. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we do this through 3 kind of main areas: education, community, and action. And at this point, I'll turn it over to our co-director of programming, Eleanor Powers, to share more about what this looks like in practice. Eleanor, and next slide, please.
Thank you, Michelle. So in 2025, HASE had an extremely busy year. We had an estimated overall 40 HASE events, plus we collaborated with other organizations across the university for an additional 15 events. And out of these, 20 provided people the opportunity to meet in person and to network. And 6 were virtual networking events, although we try to have networking as a component of almost everything that we do. Going across the different areas here, we have worked with other organizations across the university, including HAA, the Salata Institute, the Class Acts, and different SIGs throughout the different schools and the college. In the first area of climate action, we've continued to support the Climate Entrepreneurs Circle, which is now in its 5th year, with Rebecca leading the charge there, Rebecca Emanuel. We've done career panels with the Salata Institute as well as with undergraduate groups. And we had the opportunity to support Leonard Adler of Green Jobs Network, who did a presentation on job hunting, which has actually rolled into an additional involvement of him syndicating listings into our newsletter on a monthly basis. We have a monthly climate action support group, which is done by Brooke Suter, which is an offshoot of our climate action training program. And we also have other opportunities to learn about personal action, such as the presentation that we did with HAA and Class Act with Sandy Lee Chen at the reunion this year on alumni, examples of alumni action. In the educational field, we've had a speaker series as well as educational events that have included bringing in Professor Cass Sunstein to speak, former president of Costa Rica, Carlos Alvarado, Professor Rebecca Henderson, and in this coming April, we're going to be joined by Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, who will be speaking for us. We've had Tom Poulton and Trevor Thompson do a series on climate and health, which included climate resilience for health clinics, and we'll have an upcoming one on patient health and climate. We've also done a series with John Power with the Agri-Food SIG, which included bringing in Professor Wolfram Schlenker from the Harvard Kennedy School, and we'll be working with both him as well as with Edmund O'Keefe at the Kennedy School to do ongoing programming around agriculture. So we also have an ongoing book club, which has been managed and supported by Kathy Lowry with Stephen Parks and Diana McCaig, which also meets on a monthly basis. So in terms of community, we have, as I mentioned, a number of different ways that people get together on an ongoing basis, including our HASTE networking events, which are quarterly. This year coming up, it will be January, April, July, and October for our networking. We also have local HASTE groups and affinity groups that have been developing in Boston, Cambridge, New York, Washington, D.C., as well as several locations in Africa. We will have also local meetups that we do in partnership with HAA, which include ways for people throughout the university to get to know us as a SIG. And we also work with local events to do COP-related programming and Climate Week New York-related programming, including working with the Salata Institute this last year to have a kickoff event on the Green Pioneer for Climate Week New York City. So across all of these different areas, there are numerous ways for people to volunteer. And I'm going to put in the chat ways that you can sign up to join us for the programming committee that meets on a monthly basis, as well as some other areas that you can join as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Eleanor. Next slide, please. Great, thank you. William, if you could give an overview of what our current membership is looking like, that would be very welcome.
Of course. Thank you. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. I think that I'm still allowed to say that to all of you. My name is William Jensen, and perhaps you received some LinkedIn messages from me because I am the one in charge of the private HASTE LinkedIn group. So you can see here a picture of how our community looks like. You can see that actually we have 3.6K plus vetted members that are actually registered, and that we have all of your information for communication purposes and so on. And you can see the top schools and, of course, the college that are part of our membership. And it is used more to recent graduates for perhaps communication reasons and so on. But we have members from, I would say, all of living members of all of our classes coming from the 1950s. So because we believe that this is a very important and relevant topic, and we are very happy to have you here as part of our community. So I think, Eleanor, it's your turn again.
Okay. I can go ahead and take this one, Eleanor.
Perfect.
Thank you, William. And just wanted to highlight here many ways to stay connected with HASTE. So if you're on this call, you've most likely received our newsletter, which is very informative and has links to all of these amazing programs that Eleanor has mentioned, as well as more opportunities from the community, from Salata, from others. We also have a very robust LinkedIn community that William just mentioned. Would love to have that be a more active space where HASTE members can kind of get feedback from one another, share resources, share events. And then, as Eleanor mentioned, we have also really grown our presence on WhatsApp. So surrounding specific events like COP and New York Climate Week, we provide this platform for people to kind of share opportunities. And we have also created local WhatsApp groups for Boston, for DC, and for London. However, if you are interested in setting up one for your region or your city, we are more than open to that. Please contact the co-president's email. We will be sharing that in the group shortly, and happy to kind of think about how to expand what we're doing as we move more from a global network into local action. We also, as we mentioned, have collaborations with many different shared interest groups, with many different associations across Harvard. One in particular that we'll mention is CUSP. Al, I'm not sure if you or Al's one of the members of our management committee. Al, do you briefly want to share a little bit about CUSP and how people can get involved before we move on? If not, I can give a quick overview.
Sure. I'd be happy to. So CUSP is a group of about 8 schools right now, or 8 alumni groups from different schools, Harvard being one of them. And we are looking to expand. We are looking to grow. We started about a year ago. So we're just getting up to speed now. And we have events all over the place. Our schools are all over the place. And anybody who is a member of HASTE can certainly join CUSP. There's no cost to that because you're already a member of HASTE and you can join any CUSP event. And we're going to have a big event coming up in February that we're planning now.
Excellent. Thank you, Al. Next slide, please. A quick mention of our budget. Our operating budget is right around 2,300. And this is mostly to keep us afloat. So, our state registration, our website, our other digital tools. We are a 501c3, so all of your donations are tax deductible. We are going to share a link if you're interested in donating. And thank you to those of you who are regular contributors. We very much appreciate it. Our expanded goals for fundraising for the future, we hope to kind of focus on support for current students through awards for excellence in the climate space, as well as supporting recent graduates through paid internships. So if that is something that you're interested in learning more about beyond kind of our yearly operations, please do, again, reach out to the co-president's email, which will be shared many times throughout this presentation. Next slide, please. So you've already had the chance to meet some of our amazing HASTE officers. Want to take just this time to thank everybody. This is a volunteer-led organization. And so the volunteers on the screen, as well as the many others who contribute to the fantastic programming and opportunities that HASTE offers, we cannot thank you enough. It's such an amazing group. And if it is something, you've heard something that has sounded interesting to you, we would love to have you join us. Please do reach out. 2 call outs in particular. So we have a few new members, but we will also, unfortunately, be losing the presence of 2, Dinesh, our communications co-director, who has done a huge amount of work to keep our newsletter going and to innovate and make sure it's very seamless. And then next slide, please. We also want to thank our current co-president, Santiago, who will be stepping down from this position, but he won't be going far. He'll be joining our advisory board. Santiago, we cannot thank you enough for your immense contributions to our community, your enthusiasm, your knowledge, your expertise, and your just willingness to take on any challenge, to really, give your entire heart and mind and experience to HASTE. It has been such a tremendous addition. We don't know what we'll do without you, and we're so lucky that you'll, continue to be guiding us on our advisory board. So, I could go on and on and on about Santiago's contributions, but because he isn't going too far, I will stop there and just thank you again, Santiago, and invite you to say anything that you would like.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you, everyone. It's been a great honor and privilege to be the co-president of this organization. I understand that according to our bylaws, our term has to come to an end at some point. It's been an honor to serve during the time I had the privilege to serve as co-president. I'm really thankful to you, Michelle, to the other management committee members for the opportunity to allowing me to serve with you all. Eleanor, Danny, who was co-president with me during the previous term. Everyone, it's been really, really great to be part of this. Some of us started the fight, if I should say the fight, for the creation of the Green Agenda at Harvard over 20 years ago. And we can say that even though we have not reached the success we wish we had, we have two strong organizations, one from the side of the alumni, which is Harvard Alumni for Climate and the Environment, among other alumni organizations who support these endeavors, and the Salada Institute, which is the main body within Harvard that it's leading and making progress in the green agenda at Harvard and at many other places. So having been part of this, it's been a great opportunity, a great honor. I am sure that the next co-president will be supporting Michelle and the rest of the management team. And according to our bylaws, we are in about time to launch the advisory committee. If we can go to the next slide, if we can, we have these in our bylaws. We want to have an advisory committee that serves as a body of stakeholders that provides strategic advice and recommendations to HAYS in terms of guidance, in terms of planning, in terms of evaluation and review, engagement, problem solving, risk management, innovation and improvement, public accountability, networking and partnerships. And the co-president of the advisory board will be the co-president with the greatest seniority among also Danny, Sanjay will be part of this. We have invited some members of the Salada Institute team to join us, and some professors and alumni. We are waiting for their clearance from the university to be part of this, but we want to inform all of our community members that the advisory board will be there to support HAYS, and according to the bylaws, Danny Bignell, who you all know, will be leading us in this new initiative, and hopefully will be closer to HAYS in a different position, in a different way, and making sure our community becomes stronger and new leadership joins in the present and the future administrations of HAYS. Again, a huge thank you to everyone for allowing me to be part of this, to co-lead HAYS, and Michelle, thank you so much for co-leading with me during this term, and I wish you and the rest of the team all of the best in the next administration and the next few years. Thank you all.
Thank you, Santiago. Next slide, please. And with that, we would also like to announce in happier news, we just wrapped up the process for elections this week, and we are very excited to announce that Matt Haggerty will be joining previously from his position as co-director of partnerships as our president-elect for the next year. And Matt joins us with just a wealth of expertise and a deep knowledge of both HASTE and the Harvard Alumni Association. So we are very fortunate to have him over the next 2 years. Matt, welcome. If you would like to say a few words and then transition to our next session with the Salata Institute.
Great. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Santiago. And small typo, it's welcome co-president-elect Matt Hegarty. So I am honored and grateful to be serving as co-president with Michelle. And the past presidents from Sanjay, Danny, Santiago, they've really left a tremendous legacy. And I'll include in that pantheon Eleanor Powers for her continued leadership as well. So I've learned from all of them one way or another, and I hope to be half as effective as them, and in doing so, really keep pace on a positive trajectory. And one important part of that, of course, is our relationship with the Salata Institute. And we'll be transitioning now in the program to Salata. So I have the privilege of introducing three folks from Salata who are coming here, who are on the call presently. So the first is Dr. David Cash. So David was recently appointed the director of the Climate Action Accelerator at the Salata Institute. And in his past, he served as the regional administrator for the United States Environmental Protective Agency's New England office under President Joe Biden. So we're really honored to have Dr. Cash with us today. In addition, we have Peter Tufano, who is the Baker Foundation professor at the Harvard Business School and senior advisor to the Salata Institute. So he's part of the Salata Institute's faculty steering committee, which oversees and advises the Institute's work. So I don't know how he does it, meeting his HBS responsibilities and then playing a very important role with Salata, but we're grateful for all he does. And also with us is Leslie Hubbard, who's the assistant director at the Salata Institute at Harvard University. So Leslie, like our audience today, has hit every area of the globe. She has a Master of Divinity from East Asian religions from the Divinity School. She has an MBA in sustainability from BOD. She has professional credentials from Yale University, and she has a BA from the Hogeschool voor de Muziek in Rotterdam. So like our audience, which is a global audience, if you look, we have people from California to Kenya to Istanbul on this call. She brings that same global awareness. So with that, I'll turn it over to Leslie, Peter, and David.
Great. Thank you, Matt. This is Peter speaking. And the other part of our bios that Matt didn't acknowledge is that we're all alums. We're all just the same as you. We're alumni of the college, of the business school, of the Kennedy School, of the Divinity School, of GSAS. And amongst the three of us, we are thrilled to be part of this alumni gathering. Before we start, I just want to say, congratulations, but also acknowledge where we are right now. This is an interesting and important time in climate. I teach a doctoral course on climate finance. I'm putting my materials together for the first session in a couple of weeks. I've been doing this for 4 years. In that 4-year period, there's been progress in many dimensions, but, when in that first year, CO2 count was 419 parts per million. And as of this last month, it's 428 parts per million. I don't need to go through what's going on in the university, not in the university, but in the federal government in terms of kind of claiming that climate is a hoax. But all that means that the work that we do is ever more important. The work that you do as alumni and the work that we do at the university, facilitated and curated by the Solana Institute. There's one word in your mission statement that I think is critical, and it's where I want to start, which is together. If I read it carefully, that said that you would work together. And if we think about problems of climate and any systemic problem, we need to work together. So the Solana Institute really tries to bring together the university and the assets and resources and attention of the university to direct more of that to addressing not developing new educational programs or research, although that's what we do, but why we do it is here. This is the mission statement for the Solana Institute: to develop and promote durable, effective, and equitable solutions to the climate change challenges confronting humanity. Well, of course, we develop and promote them through research, and we support 7 major research streams, as well as a number of minor ones. We support development and promotion through education, both education at Harvard and elsewhere. For example, I run a doctoral course across 150 institutions. But we also support the development and promotion of solutions through engagement. You're going to hear from David Cash at the conclusion of our little remarks. David is the new head of the Climate Action Accelerator, which is really the locus of activity for engagement activities. About a year ago, we at Solana realized that we were 2 years old. We had started to get things under control, and that we needed to spend much more time supporting our alumni. Now, the good news is the alumni had gone off and done tremendous stuff without any of our support, and in some sense, without as much support from Harvard as that they probably should have. So when we began, rather than try to suggest what alumni agendas should be, we convened a working group, which is represented by HACE and many other, both groups and individuals, with really 2 goals. How can we support alumni to become more effective and resilient climate leaders, which is how do we support HACE and Class Acts and others in the work that they do? And secondly, how can we enable alumni to help us become more effective in the work that we do? And that's really the goal that we're talking about for alumni engagement. We want engaged, educated, effective, and resilient climate leaders. I think that's going to map pretty well onto what it is that HACE is trying to accomplish. I think, and we're working hand in glove. So we really focused on 3 core questions. First, how do alumni want to engage on climate and sustainability? We've done that through a working group and through a survey that we've been trying to collect as well. How can we present a clear, more coherent set of opportunities? For example, Leslie will describe some of the things we've done this past year. One of them is to try to put on the Solana website most, if not all, of the portals through which you can get to alumni-related activities that are available through Harvard. And third, what type of activities best support alumni leadership and action? What can we do that's going to make a difference? Not to substitute for what HACE is doing, but to support what HACE is doing, to complement what HACE is doing, and then to work together to build out the parts that neither of us have the capacity to do right now. Next slide, please, Leslie. So what we've learned, and then I'll turn it over to Leslie, is that alumni want clear pathways, not scattered invitations. That fragmentation is a barrier to engagement. Trust is built by showing up where alumni already are, which includes a Saturday morning, and momentum increases when engagement moves beyond events towards action. And if you think about pathways and showing up where alumni are in action, I think you'll get a pretty good sense of where we're headed. So I'd like to turn it over to Leslie. You got an introduction to her before. I got to say, Leslie is the most energetic, committed person that I think I've ever met. And she's always on your side. Over to you, Leslie.
Thank you so much, Peter. Well, it's been such a pleasure to work with Peter Tufano. He came to me early in 2025 with this fantastic framework on how to engage alumni. And we've now taken this fantastic framework as a concept and now put it into action and practice. And over the past year, across the multitude of different things that we've done, whether they're events, convenings, or surveys and whatnot, we've as a principal, partnered across internal Harvard Center schools and also alumni groups like HACE and ClassX. We've also worked with regional partners as well. And we've tried to clarify how alumni activities connect to the Slot Institute, which is exactly what Peter had shared earlier. We have used our website to consolidate a lot of information, not just for alumni, but also for students and faculty as well, as climate work is pretty much scattered across the university. And one of the main purposes of the Slot Institute is to be a hub for all these activities. And then as we've shifted into the end of 2025, we've begun shifting from convening and events to coordination and action. So just to go over some of the events, and many of you have attended the events, I'm so happy to see Ariane and Leonard Adler, who's presented in various events, and HACE leadership, who've been pivotal to these events. So just to name a few, we co-hosted with HACE DC Climate Action Week networking session. We traveled to San Francisco for Climate Action Week and did a fantastic panel on climate resilience and wildfires. We were present in London Climate Action Week. We're working with regional partners in HACE to host a networking session. And we also showed up at New York Climate Week as well with very robust programming in addition to a networking session that was on the Green Pioneer, which HACE was pivotal. And many of you were participating in the, both the preparation and the actual networking event itself. And then we hosted a pre-COP engagement in Sao Paulo. And we're working on a Boston event in this coming year as well. And we've also co-created engagement opportunities, as I shared earlier, with HACE, with ClassX. We worked together to coordinate our presentations for Harvard Alumni Day, as well as Harvard Climate Action Week, to which many of the alumni working group members were presenters or moderators, such as Danny, who is on this call. And we've increased visibility of alumni-led climate work as well in co-hosting many of the webinars that were shared earlier as part of the activities and promoted them on our website and our newsletters. And we're also really passionate about building the next generation of climate leaders who are currently students and connecting alumni with students. So we hosted for the third year the Climate and Sustainability Career Expo, to which Leonard Adler, who is on the call, was one of the keynote speakers. We led convenings in DC and New York to bring together students and alumni for professional networking purposes. We've expanded mentorship and career pathways through our Careers in Climate Action speaker series as well, again, to which many of you, including Sanjay Seth, have been speakers and a part of and helped promote. So I now turn the microphone back to Peter.
Well, thanks, Leslie, and more than that. And you know, some of you may be interested in what's going on campus. There's also a student ambassadors program on campus. There's lots of electives going on campus. There's continuing conversations about how to create more undergraduate pathways for environment and also master's pathways. I will say that sometimes the academic approvals process is slow, but don't worry.
I know Peter is on the Cape, so Peter, we lost you a little bit. I don't know if you can hear us. We have one more minute. While Peter is having some internet connectivity issues, I'm happy to carry on the presentation. So what we've learned in the past year, and through a survey that HACE has helped disperse, as well as ClassX and through our newsletter, is that alumni want fewer one-off events and more continuity and follow through afterwards. They want opportunities to apply expertise both locally and regionally. And they want practice toolkits and shared learning opportunities, as well as having spaces for honest conversations about really challenging topics such as adaptation, resilience, and climate realism. If Peter comes back, please let me know.
I'm back. Leslie,
great.
if you can hear me. Sorry, I'm on Cape Cod, and you know, internet is sometimes spotty. So really moving from Salata-led convenings to really alumni-led convenings, from climate insiders to a broader alumni base, and then really about activating people. And so the working group has been in particular thinking about how we make these transitions over the course of 2026. Next slide, Leslie. And so, how can we build out more alumni executive education and skill building? How can we build not events, but how can we work with local chapters to build out action events, which are projects as opposed to things that you go listen to? How can we create venues for more alumni thought leadership? And how can we create some self-funded, scalable alumni initiatives? I will confess that I had never seen the budget for HACE at $2,300. You certainly can use more support. Next slide. In terms of turning to action, though, it's the Climate Action Accelerator led by David Cash, where some of the acceleration activity by faculty and students at Harvard take place. So I'm going to let David explain what's going on there, and then we'll take questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter. And it's phenomenal for me to be back on campus. As Peter noted, I'm an alum as well. I was at the Kennedy School and graduated in 2001 with a PhD in public policy. And it's great to be back. And the Salata Institute and its community has just been a phenomenal place to land. I get to work with faculty like Peter and remarkable staff like Leslie. And the team has been fantastic. So as our collaboration with HACE matures and evolves over time, I think that we're going to see that we can take advantage of multiple expertises that we have both within Salata in the larger Harvard community and within the alumni community. So incredibly exciting. So the whole mission of the accelerator is to have an impact outside of Harvard based on the research and activities that are going on in Harvard. And we know that this is a historical problem and challenge for universities to have research that's often seen as siloed or within a particular sector actually make a difference outside. And so we are working with the faculty research team, with partners outside, and of course with alums who are often our connection outside. We're focusing on solutions to problem. That was a highlighted point of what Peter said at the beginning, and things that can be scaled. Sometimes we are working at the global level, so at the United Nations, for example, or with international NGOs. Sometimes we're working at the federal, state, local levels within the United States or in other countries. Sometimes we're working with businesses. Sometimes we're working very much at the community level. So all of these kinds of efforts that we're taking are trying to leverage the research that's done on campus, create solutions, and have those solutions make a real impact. We like to talk about tons and lives. That's what we're interested in, reducing emissions and saving lives. And throughout all of this is the thread of equity. How can we move to a clean energy future and do it in an equitable way? So it's incredibly exciting. And there are many, many ways that alums can be engaged in this respect, and it's only limited by our creativity within Salata, within the alumni community. And I'm just going to give a really concrete example, just so you know. We're considering developing a program in a country in Southeast Asia. We happen to know some alums who are there, who are very well situated within government, within the private sector, and they're going to be working really closely with us to try to create the kinds of networks in which we can establish a trust-based relationship with folks in this country who can act as a kind of pivot point for our researchers, for researchers from other universities, not in the Harvard sphere, but in other countries even, to make a big difference outside of Harvard, impacting negotiations, impacting ultimately compliance with international requirements. So that's the kind of thing where the alumni engagement is critical. It's in my mind, it's likely we would not be able to move forward in this regard if we did not have the kind of relationships that we do with alumni there. So you can now imagine, as we think of all of the multiplicity of ways that action has to take, whether it's in the private sector or public sector, or the NGO, the community-based organization sector, where relationships are going to be critical. So delighted to be part of this ongoing conversation that's going to evolve and transmogrify into the future in ways that will be mutually beneficial and have real impact. I want to hand it back to Peter.
Great. Well, thank you. And so, as the slide suggests, you can participate in lots of ways. A lot of aligned alumni events, sometimes with Hayes, sometimes with other groups, sometimes just by Salata. Lead or co-lead local alumni initiatives. For example, we've been approached in a city in the US where the local environmental groups have come together, and they come to us and said, do you think some folks might want to work with us on some of the priorities that we have? We're trying to see if we can connect them up with alumni in that area. Contribute expertise to the Climate Action Accelerator. That's what David was just talking about. Mentor students and early career alumni. Leslie was talking about how it is that, one of the more effective things that we've done on campus is really to support students through mentoring and really help us think about what the next phase of alumni engagement is, alumni action is. The university as a university isn't going to take positions on issues. President Garber has recently said that we should, in our educational roles, not be advocates, but we're all alums. And as alums who are committed to dealing with the climate crisis that we face. We are going to use the power of the Salata Institute.
I'll finish the sentence. We'll use the power of the Salata Institute to engage as robustly and collaboratively as we can with the alumni community, and are incredibly excited about whatever next steps that we take together. Michelle, is it back to you, or are we going to do Q&A?
I'll take it from here.
Okay,
thanks.
Great. Sure.
Thanks, David, Leslie, and Peter. You give us a lot to think about. We are kind of short on time, but Brooke Suda, Hayes member, asks, I'm curious, to what degree are the interdevelopmental goals beginning to get attention as a necessary complement to the SDGs to support climate and sustainability progress? So I don't know who would like to field that. Maybe you, David?
Yeah, I'm not, and maybe Leslie may know and Peter might.
Leslie?
I'm not sure
Okay.
which of our teams are the most likely to be looking at those. At this point, on the international level, there are a variety of different areas that we have a very high level focus. One is on carbon abatement adjustment tariffs. We've been really successful in Brazil in the conversations with that. There's a wide-ranging biodiversity effort and potential effort looking at offsets. How these interact with the SDGs and IDGs is unclear at this point, but there are a number of areas in which our international efforts are moving forward with partners all over the world. I don't know, Leslie, if you have more to add to that.
Sure. Yeah, I can build on David's perspective from our education initiatives, particularly at the graduate level when we're thinking about potentially new degree programs or certificate programs. I see, Brooke, you mentioned Professor Rebecca Henderson, and I know that she's very interested in this space. She is part of the Committee on Climate Education. And as the faculty in that committee are thinking about new degree programs, they're thinking about embedding these types of frameworks in the core competencies within the program. So I'm not sure yet how that's going to manifest curricularly, but it's definitely a priority.
Great. Well, thank you. And one thing that I'm going to remember from this presentation is David's characterization of tons and lives being a priority. That's something I think everybody can hold on to and grasp. So thank you all. That was really enlightening. And from here, I think we're going to go to breakout rooms. So Michelle, perhaps you can give us an overview of that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for that great presentation. It was really great to hear that overview and some of those calls to action, which I always appreciate in a meeting like this. We're just going to shorten our time a little bit so we can get to our next presenter, but we'll take about 5 minutes in breakout groups to kind of get to know one another. And so these are very informal. We will share our questions in the chat in just a minute, but essentially just an opportunity to meet one another. So share your name, your Harvard affiliation, anything within the climate sphere that interests you right now. So whether that's related to your career, a question that you're grappling with, and then perhaps if you have time, how can HASTE kind of help to advance that interest or to help you learn more? So I'm going to open up the breakout groups, and if you have trouble joining, I'll be able to help in just a minute, but let's go ahead and open those up, and we will see you back here shortly.
It's with great pleasure to welcome my longtime friend, Sanjay Seth, the Deputy Commissioner for Climate, Air, and Energy at New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. He's our guest for this annual meeting, and as you know, he is a former co-president of HASTE. He was also the Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor for Climate and Equity for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Region 1. In this role, he supported the regional administration to craft and implement policy, planning, operations, and personal strategies across all programs with a focus on climate change, environmental justice, and regional implementation of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act programs. He also served as Climate Resilience Program Manager for the City of Boston, where he managed the Climate Ready Boston program, which he focused on implementing a multi-billion-dollar resilience plan to help prepare Boston for the impacts of climate change. And prior to that, Sanjay worked on an interdisciplinary consultant team on behalf of the City of New York to support a plan for a multi-billion-dollar investment to protect New York from the impacts of climate change. While at Harvard, he founded the Climate Leaders Program, a year-long interdisciplinary program for students with a professional interest in climate action, which is based at the Harvard University Center for the Environment and the Salada Institute. And he was also the co-founder and co-president of HASTE with almost 2,000 members at the time. We have almost doubled up our affiliated membership within the Alumni Association. And previously, he also served as a fellow of New Urban Progress, a program focused on transatlantic relations among metropolitan regions, focused on developing more sustainable and just cities. He served on a teaching team at the Kennedy School for a hands-on course focused on building effective values-driven organizing campaigns. And he also served as a fellow of the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative and as a research analyst at the Regional Plan Association, focusing on climate adaptation, climate mitigation, international forums for sharing best practices among global cities and regions. He is originally from Bismarck, North Dakota, and he has a background in community and political organizing. He is a dual degree graduate in the Master's in Urban Planning from the Harvard Graduate School of Design and the Master's in Public Administration program at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. He also holds a bachelor's in economics, politics, and public policy from Goldsmiths College, University of London. So Sanjay, it's a great pleasure to have you here, and over to you. Thank you.
Awesome, Santiago. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to the whole HASTE team, Santiago, Michelle, everybody, for having me today. It's really such a pleasure to see how HASTE has grown, and how, I was just saying this in the breakout, like it has grown so significantly. So many folks have come to it and made it their own thing and made it better and added things that folks really do need in the Harvard community. So it's so exciting to see how it continues to be a good home for people. So hi, as Santiago was saying, my name is Sanjay. I, in addition to those roles that I've had previously, I was also elected by the alumni community to serve as an elected director of the Harvard Alumni Association. And so today I'm just speaking to you in my capacity as an alum and as a HASTE member, and not necessarily on behalf of the state of New York. This is Saturday. We don't need to do that today. Given that background, I was asked to share, some thoughts with you on the current moment for climate and environmental policy, and then a little bit on how HASTE members and Harvard alumni can be involved in this moment. So I want to start with just like a little bit of context setting. Where are we right now on climate policy? I think this is a group that is paying a lot of attention, and if you're following the headlines, it's kind of bleak, at the national level in the United States, and there'll be a little bias in my remarks to the United States just because that's primarily where I'm working lately. The current administration is really treating climate change as a cultural issue rather than what it actually is, an economics issue, a jobs issue, a public health issue, an innovation issue. No, they're treating it mostly like culture. So it's not particularly sophisticated. The goal is, destroy anything with the word climate in it, no matter who it hurts, even if it hurts their own voters. And just this week, the United States withdrew from participation in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which, is the primary international forum for cooperation for more than 30 years. It was a treaty ratified during the Bush administration, it's the first Bush administration, so it shows you how far we've come. So that's obviously a bummer. And then, the administration is really attempting to dismantle, often illegally, many of the programs that were set up during the Biden administration. When I was an appointee at EPA, and I see my former boss on this call, David Cash, very small world. We worked on all sorts of things, like setting up a $20 billion greenhouse gas reduction fund and many other programs and folks we're depending on. And so, a lot of those actions are also tied up in court right now, and that's really unfortunate. And then separately, at the same time, we're seeing the federal government destroy decades of research and investment in human capital, both inside the federal government and by extension, by pulling back these programs throughout our economy and society. And they're attacking civil servants, they're dismantling bipartisan programs designed to protect Americans from climate impacts and invest in their well-being. And they're even going after offshore wind projects on the East Coast, halting projects that already have permits and are already under construction, and they're coming up with some pretty flimsy national security claims, but they're really just trying to destabilize an entire industry and scare off investment. And so, this coordinated attack on Americans on climate policy, it's going to have a lasting consequence. And in the near term, it's really going to set us back by at least a few years. But here's the important part. States are not sitting still. Just yesterday, it's nice to be able to say this, just yesterday, New York sued the federal government over its actions related to Empire Wind and Sunrise Wind. So 2 large-scale offshore wind electricity projects, and together, these projects would generate about 1,700 megawatts of power. That's about 10% of the electricity needs of New York City and Long Island. So we know that these federal actions that are happening here in the United States, they're putting New York's energy reliability, affordability, and clean energy progress at risk. But we know that states will not accept that quietly. We're using every tool available to protect jobs, investment, and clean power that everybody deserves, and we've worked hard to deliver. So while the federal government matters and the damage being done will be real, states and cities, I believe, are going to continue to lead wherever they can. And for example, just sharing some context, and y'all might already know this, but there's about 24 states, including New York, participating in something called the U.S. Climate Alliance. And this is a bipartisan coalition of governors that represents roughly 55% of the U.S. population and about 60% of the U.S. economy. So that means that no matter what, a majority of the United States is always and still very much in the climate fight. And, these states are acting not because climate change is some wild ideological thing, but because it's practical. It protects public health, it supports reliable and affordable energy, and it creates good paying jobs and long-term economic competitiveness. Who's going to fight that? So we know that states are still in, and we also know that cities are still in, and they're continuing to lead, often with more ambition than states. And so another organization you might pay attention to is called Climate Mayors. It's a bipartisan network of nearly 350 mayors from 48 states, representing somewhere around 70 million Americans. And we see many cities, including cities like New York City and Boston, that are continuing to push forward on climate policy regardless of what is happening in Washington. And Michelle, I see you are very quick with the links. That's awesome. And beyond government, there are companies, universities, investors, and civic institutions across the country that are all working to ensure that America remains all in on climate action, even if the federal government has temporarily lost its marbles, both figuratively and seemingly literally. That said, there are real headwinds we have to confront. And one of the trickiest ones that I'm seeing right now, very real in my day job, is just like the growth of massive new energy loads. And so we're seeing data centers, crypto operations, and other energy intensive industries wanting to come online really quickly. And to meet that projected demand, energy prices are rising. In some cases, coal and gas plants are being kept online longer, being repowered, or being newly built, either to serve these loads directly or to backfill when these loads come in and take all the renewables. And so there's clearly a fairness issue here. If companies want to bring on these like online energy demands the size of new cities, essentially overnight, they need to pay into the system to make that possible. And right now, too much of that cost, is being shifted onto us. It's shifted onto everybody. It's like if someone showed up to a potluck empty-handed and brought their whole family, everyone knows that's unfair, and we can do better than that. And so the good news is that renewable energy remains the cheapest way to add new generation to the grid. So the challenge is not economics. The challenge is making sure we actually build it and that the costs of building it are allocated fairly. Now, all right, everyone in this room is connected by being a Harvard alum. And I was asked to talk about how Harvard alumni and HASTE members specifically within this context can engage in this moment. And so how can you get involved? First, you showed up today. That matters, truly, A+. In a moment when disengagement is super, super easy, showing up is an active choice, and it's really great to see all the folks in the room. And then second, there are many ways to engage through HASTE. HASTE is not just a network, it's an organizing platform, right? It exists to help you find each other, build some shared understanding, and take action together. And so looking at the time, I just want to close with a quick story that connects to how I want to show up in this moment, how I think we all need to show up in this moment. I shared this story a little bit earlier this week on LinkedIn, but I just wanted to share it here as well because it's meaningful to me. So I'm based in Brooklyn now, and I've been really excited to see New York City government transition to a new leader in Zohran Mamdani. I watched his inauguration, and it was both like personally and professionally meaningful to see the direction we're heading here in New York. I'm personally also delighted that brown kids all across the country who are not going to grow up being asked why they aren't the mayor of New York already in their 30s. It's just there's a lot of layers here. But I grew up in Bismarck, North Dakota, and the first political campaign I ever worked on was my mom's write-in campaign for this local school board. It was like a totally wild experience. She put herself out there. She recruited friends and family. She went door to door, introducing herself to people who had never met her before. We spent a lot of time making sure everyone could spell her name because people didn't know a lot of people named Aruna Seth. So we did a lot of campaigning, and she actually went on to win in a crowded field. And when I graduated high school, I walked across this like very rickety stage in the Civic Center gymnasium in these weird flip-flops and a very crumpled maroon robe. And it was my mom who hugged me and handed me my high school diploma. And so, while the policy nerd part of my brain is super excited about the teams that are coming together around new leaders like Mamdani and the fact that we have new generations of leadership coming up all across the country, watching his inauguration earlier this month hit me somewhere deeper, and it reminded me of how I can show up in this work and how I think we all can show up in this work. It took me back to being a kid in North Dakota, watching my mom put herself out there and carve a path for herself in her adopted community. And in doing so, really showing us what we all can do and creating a path for us too. And the reason I'm sharing this story right now in a talk on climate is that participating in our communities, participating in democracy, it's really always been an act of secular faith. It's not a given. And lately that faith has really been tested. And so for me, moments like the inauguration of a new mayor reminds me that showing up, like you showing up today, really still matters, that communities still reward real commitment. And then we can all take inspiration, regardless of our politics, regardless of what we care about or don't care about. I think we can all take inspiration from the stubborn optimism of immigrants who show up, become citizens, run for office, and work to protect their communities. I think as someone who, like many of the folks on this call, work their butts off for all sorts of policy wins, big policy wins do matter. They matter a lot. But what sustains our communities, what sustains democracy, especially in hard moments, is the willingness of people like you, like folks in this room, like folks who should be in this room, to keep showing up anyway and believe that a different future is possible. And so that's what I want to leave you with today. You have to keep showing up. You cannot let go of the idea that the future can and should be different, and that it will be different if we all show up. So when we created HASTE, we set 3 simple pillars for our work. We said we're working on community, education, and action. This community exists to help you find your people. But once you find each other, you got to do something about it. It's not simply enough to be in community. You need to educate yourselves, and then you need to act. And the thing that makes me happy is y'all are already doing this. Y'all are already acting in so many ways, creating so many new paths for people to plug into this moment. And I think that's really what matters. What will you do with the community that you found here at HASTE? There's unlimited possibility, but you need to show up, build community, and create the path to action, not just for yourself, but for the broader alumni community. The future's really not going to build itself. So thank you for HASTE, for inviting me to be with you today. I'm so inspired by what HASTE has become, and I think we might have time for a couple questions.
Yeah, please, if you have a question for Sanjay, please share it in the chat. While you do that, I will ask you, Sanjay, your career spans government, nonprofit, academic, and private sectors. So what strategies work best to foster cross-sector collaboration on climate solutions? You're muted.
Sorry. You said what strategies work best for cross-sector collaboration? I would say, so while I was a student at Harvard, I created the Climate Leaders Program. And what that was about creating a forum for people from, the business school, law school, policy, design, engineering, public health, divinity, education, medical. I think we even had a dentistry one at some point. Like creating a space for everybody where they can figure out how to speak each other's language and figure out how do we talk about climate differently? What are the different interests we have? How do we come up with reasoned solutions differently in each of our professions and industries? And so one is creating a space for people to figure out how to translate to each other and understand each other's interests better. The other is just doing it, right? Like people create a lot of talking shops and there are so many ways to just get stuff done. And I really am attracted or pulled to the people who, break out the spreadsheet, break out the plan, get a to-do list together. Like it's great to have big ideas. It's really meaningful just to take that first step. And so I think, honestly, having gigantic strategies in your head is a very intellectualized way. I think the best way to do it is just start organizing, start talking to people, build a relationship, and see where it goes. And make sure that each person you recruit into whatever organization you're building is also building that. Like, how do you build an organization that grows? I think HASTE is a great example of that. Like, each person that is pulled in is organizing their own community. And now we have folks, like I was just on a breakout with Al, who's now connecting HASTE to all these other university climate organizations and trying to make sure that we're plugged into a really broad spectrum of work. So I would say the simple answer is be a community organizer. Don't overthink it and actually get stuff done. Don't try to talk about how you might get stuff done.
Thank you, Sanjay. Well, we'll make an exception in terms of not having the questions just on the chat. David Wilcox has a question. Please open your mic and ask your question, David.
Yeah, thank you for making an exception. I fundamentally believe really good questions can't be written in a chat. So my 2 questions are essentially the questions that New York asked when they created offshore wind, and that we will all need to ask if we are going to focus our efforts in a way that will be impactful. And I'll ask those questions, and then I'll ask you to comment, if you don't mind putting your New York hat on for a little while. How would a state in the country respond to these questions, given that the federal government isn't involved? So the 2 questions are, is the system that I'm planning on supporting and funding scalable at a level that would create measurable impact on the problem? That's the first question. And then the second question is, what system does it replace that's doing damage? So you both need a system that's scalable and you need it to replace a system that's doing damage. If you're not doing both of those things, you're not going to have a measurable impact. And offshore wind is a perfect example of having yes as the answer to both those questions. Unfortunately, energy is the only system where we have two yeses. We don't have yeses for food systems. We don't have yeses, scalable yeses for many transportation problems. We don't have scalable yeses for homes and buildings. So each of those systems will have to be replaced. What should a state do to find the systems that they need to replace their bad systems with and then get them replaced?
Definitely. Well, I'm going to keep my Harvard alumni hat on because my New York hat can be kind of heavy sometimes when I'm answering broad questions. But yeah, I would say that's a great point, right? Like we have to replace our transportation systems, food systems. We have to rethink our buildings. We got to rethink our energy systems. Like it's really deep, and it all needs to happen now. And we're not good at now, big, and like essential, urgent. If we don't fix this, there are huge problems, right? And I think we can get good at that. So I would just step back and say, how do we get better at doing big things again? Because sometimes it can be really frustrating, like the scale at which we need to change on climate and the scale at which we are changing are not lining up, right? Across the entire world, we are not on track to meet the Paris Agreement. And then we see backsliding happening in countries across the world. So I would just say yes to your framing about like, how do we get systems that work at scale, and then how do we adopt them in a way that actually delivers and replaces the thing that harms? One of the things that's on my mind on that second part of your test is I'm really curious about our energy systems and whether this like increase in renewables that we are seeing and is really exciting is going to create a substitution effect, or if it's all just going to get gobbled up by data centers and AI. And I think we're leading towards the latter side of this. And the way I framed it earlier, I was at a conference earlier this week in Utah with a lot of other states, and I framed it as the Katy Highway problem, right? It was like in Texas, they had an issue with traffic on a highway. And this is a notorious highway. And their solution to the traffic on the highway was, let's go from 26 lanes to 28 lanes. And it turned out that didn't solve the traffic issue. It just absorbed all of the demand. And so what I'm really worried about right now is our efforts to expand energy supply may not lead people to energy efficiency. It may just lead people to keep absorbing energy supply to the point where we're not displacing fossil gen. We're just adding more renewable gen to the system. And so I think your second question, even in the energy system, is still a question mark. And I don't think it's always going to be a yes. And I think we need to make sure it's a yes, but I don't think it's going to be a yes.
Excellent point.
Well, thank you so much, David, for asking this question. Sanjay, I can't thank you enough for being with us as our guest and co-founder and former co-president of HASTE. It's been really a great honor and pleasure to hear from you today. And we'll move on with the next part of the agenda for this afternoon. Michelle, I guess we are going to the breakout rooms now again.
Yes. Thank you again, Sanjay, for that great conversation. We have, I realize we're getting close to our time. This always happens in meetings. There's always so much to talk about. So if you are interested in networking more with the folks here and other HASTE members, we have another virtual networking session later this month, January 20th. Will be led by William. So look forward to that. But in our last 13 minutes, we're going to roll up our sleeves. We have a few priorities that we have identified as a leadership team from 2025. And these are draft priorities. And so we are looking forward to you, those who can stick around, no problems if you can't. We are looking forward to hearing your feedback to see if these resonate with you, if there's something that you think that we're missing. And again, we can't take on every priority. as a volunteer organization, but I think we can identify ones that are really important and then begin to map steps to get there. And so I think Sanjay's words resonate very much with this conversation, breaking down what our goals are into actions that our HASTE community can take. So our first, and I have also shared a document in the chat that you should be able to see to get more elaboration on each of these priorities. First, in 2026, we would like to move from a global network to local action. So we'd really like to begin to build the structures, beyond our WhatsApp groups, beyond our climate weeks, build the structures for those of you who are in these communities to connect locally and to begin to identify what steps you need to take as a community and how we can leverage the power of the Harvard Institution to do that. So that's our first priority. Our second priority, and thank you to many of those of you on the call who have helped us advance this priority in 2025. Every job is a climate job. So Leonard Adler, I'm not sure if he's still on, but as Eleanor mentioned, doing a lot of work to connect us to really amazing opportunities in the climate space. But with this priority, we would also like to have anybody who has a job to begin to think of it as a climate job. So, whether you're in the medical field, whether you're in the business field, think about how to bring a climate lens to the work that you're doing. And part of this priority is also connecting our recent graduates to climate careers, to mentorship opportunities. And then our final priority would be to engage all alumni. So currently our 4,000 members represent about 1% of the alumni population. So what can our strategies be to really have this message, this organization resonate with more alumni? How can we grow our numbers? And so we have a couple of questions for you in their last 10 minutes. William, if you could go to the next slide, please. Do these priorities resonate with you? Is there anything that you would add? What steps or programs can we begin to implement or further implement to get to these priorities? Are there new partners? There are many of our partners already on the call and that you've heard from today who are doing amazing work, but are there new partners that we should be connecting with? And then finally, are you interested in helping to carry out the strategy? So are you willing to kind of take the next step with this organization and help us see it to fruition? So in each of our breakout groups, if one person could please volunteer to be our note taker, we will have a Google form to kind of capture your thoughts and your voluntary willingness to participate with this organization. And we will share all of that in the chat. So we will go into those breakout groups for our last 10 minutes, reconvene very quickly, and let you go about the rest of your weekend.